Hey guys, here we are. Sorry about that little delay there. We've got Brandon at his house right now. He's going to be going over a little bit about his HERMS system and what all he has to brew, and he's going to tell us a little bit about Brew Day Organization and all that good stuff. So anyway, here's Brandon. Hey Brandon.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, good. How
Good.
are
So
you
I'm
dealing
doing
with the whole quarantine stuff? Right?
yeah. We have an only child and she is 100% energy from the time she wakes up till the time she goes to bed. So she's keeping us plenty busy. And it's nice to get out in the shop and escape for a few hours and have a brew day. So that's what I'm doing. I'm brewing an English bitter. I think in the little video I recorded for the last show that y'all did when I wasn't able to be there, I was talking about brewing beers that turn around quick. So the last one I did, a Belgian blonde at about 5.5%, and I'm gonna just do a bitter today. I expect that I will be well into the kegs on both of those brews before this thing ends, which is fine with me.
Yeah. Then
So I'm
you can
I'm
sit around
brewing
and drink
today.
all day, right?
Oh, you know what? It's really hard not to do that. You got to watch the clock and make sure you don't get into it too early. So,
Yeah,
especially
it's
because I'm working from home too. So,
absolutely. Yeah, we really have tried to be good up here at the shop as well because it was kind of a uh, easy to crack open with not beers without customers coming in all the time. So
yep, yep. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about my brew day organization and the way I do it. Normally I don't think I brew by myself very often at all anymore. Normally I have people over and we're having beers and that kind of thing. And I don't think there's anything as frustrating as a beer not coming out quite right because you got drinking and talking and forgot to add something to it. So I
right.
try to be real organized. I have a very strict rule. I don't drink at all and before I mash in. So I try to lay out everything before I get going. So let me give you a little shot here of my brew cart. This is my little rolling stainless cart that I've got that goes next to my brewing system that I just keep all my immediate brew day stuff on. I've got all my water additions and scales and pH meters and all that stuff on there. And I've got an old laptop that I use as my brew computer. But most importantly is what I do right here, where before I get started, I put down sticky notes with all the times for my additions and what needs to be added. Everything from water additions that go into the boil. I've got about a half pound of corn sugar right here, and all my hop additions, as well as whirlflock and yeast nutrient, which are two of the things I think people forget the most often. You get to the end of your day and you think, why is this so cloudy? And oh, I forgot the whirlflock again. So I try to lay all that stuff out ahead of time, keep it all right here. And then I've got a little three-way timer on here that just reminds me when I need to, and when an alarm goes off, I walk on over here and I grab my next edition and I put it in. So I'm just now hitting boil here. So I'm going to start with my first couple additions, and then we can kind of go over my brew system. So I'll put my water additions in and my corn sugar, and then my bittering addition.
It looks like you and Mikey have backwards systems.
Well, I think mine is backwards to just about everybody's out there. Is his the same as mine?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. This just seemed to make sense to me when I put it together, and I quickly realized it was backwards from how everybody else's was. But I don't know. I just like it this way. I didn't want the boil kettle next to my control panel over here,
Well, that's
so
probably a
that's kind of
good
why I
good
did it this
idea
way.
too. Yeah, absolutely.
Although I could put the control panel on either side. This just kind of seemed to be the way that looked right to me.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the HERMS system because this is the one that I bought from you. Gosh, this was almost
Oh,
8 years ago now. I bought this,
wow. That's crazy.
and it's been through a lot of iterations. I've made a lot of changes to it over the years, but the way it is sitting right now is probably the same configuration I've had for 2 or 3 years. Once I did get it all figured out exactly how I wanted it, I found that if I left it alone and didn't mess with it too much, my brew days just go so much more smoothly. I'm going to start my timer. See, I get talking and I forget things. So
Yeah. Well.
my brew days just go so much more smoothly. A lot of people that brew with me for the first time, they say, "Wow, it's seems like we're just standing around doing nothing most of the time," and that's the truth because everything just runs like clockwork for me. So we'll start with so let's start with what a HERMS system is. HERMS stands for heat exchange recirculating mash, and it's basically a way to control the temperature in your mash without direct firing, so that you can either maintain the temperature you're at, or you can move up between steps for different steps in your mash, whether it's just your regular saccharification rest and then up to a mash out, or whether you're doing multiple rests for protein or beta glucan, or different
Right.
saccharification rests and all that. And you don't want to direct fire the bottom of your mash tun, because you'll end up scorching the wort that's down there, and it'll be really uneven heating. So instead, what we do is we recirculate the mash, the liquid from the mash, through this HERMS coil that's inside the hot liquor tank, and we control the temperature of it by raising and lowering the temperature of the hot liquor tank.
Yeah.
And in a
So
nutshell, that's what a HERMS system
so
is.
typically when you're recirculating, that has water in it. So this is a little more of a what you would say it was a little more of a an advanced technique. I mean, compared to what a lot of
Yes.
people are doing now.
Yeah.
So this is
And
to
mine
do
is a little
multiple.
less complicated than Mikey's. Mine's a little more manual than Mikey's is that you saw yesterday.
Yeah, because his has all like it kicks the pumps on and off, and according to the temperature, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
awesome.
so what I'm doing is a lot more similar to kind of brewing in a cooler, where I mash in and I get it where I want it, and I just let it sit there, and I try to hold temperature. So this time of year, I didn't even have to recirculate at all to hold temperature. I lost about 1 or 2 degrees during the mash, which is no big deal, about the same as brewing in a cooler. So I don't recirculate during my mash. I just let it sit there. Where Mikey and a lot of other people, they continuously recirculate. I just, if I need to adjust the temperature, that's when I kick on the pump and do it.
Okay,
So
so
what
let
I end up doing is, go ahead.
what is the little? Is that just a way that you can skip the Herms coil there that you got right there? There's like a
Talking
little.
about this right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a failed experiment of mine that I've yet to remove from the system because it's
Okay.
a pain in the butt. But that's exactly what it was. Is I was looking to bypass the Herms coil so I could continually recirculate without it changing the temperature. We talked about it a little bit on the show when I did it. The problem is
It got
this bottom three-way valve here heats up real hot. And so
ah.
you end up changing the temperature and it doesn't work. So I just bypass that thing completely, and I need to just take that whole assembly off there.
Okay. Cool. Cool.
The other thing, so since we're at the boil, I've obviously finished my mash, my sparge, and everything. I've now just got about 4 gallons of water with some brew clean in it that's nice and hot that I'm going to use to clean at the end of the day.
Okay. Perfect.
Just run it through my pumps and all that stuff.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect.
So the other thing I want to point out to people, and this is I'm trying to encourage several people to go to using this, is this bag that I've got here on the mash tun, which is meant for a brew in a bag system. I've gone to using that. If you look at my sparge arm here, if I get in here close, I think you can see the holes that are in the top of it. They're pretty small,
Yeah.
and they're small enough to trap small pieces of grain. So what I was doing is I was getting grain in there, and it was plugging the holes up, and I wouldn't have good flow through my sparge arm. So I started using this brew in a bag in my mash tun, and I really like it. It filters out all the real fine stuff. I don't know if you can tell on the video there, it's really fine, and it keeps all the flour and all the particles completely out of the system. I'm a big stickler for real clear wort, and it really helps with that. And the new ones that you've got in stock there at the shop are even better than the old ones used to be. I have to replace it every now and then, and I just replaced it recently. And this has, I don't know if you can see it, but there's reinforcement straps
Yeah.
all through it. And
It's
then it's
really
a
built
really
for
nice
brew in a
fine
bag,
mesh.
you
Yeah, it's really well done. When people first started using these things, they were using paint strainer bags from Sherwin-Williams. And now we have these things that are actually built specifically for the purpose. And man, they work well. And then what's nice is when I'm done, I just lift that out of there and go dump the grain in the grass and rake it around, and I'm good to go.
know.
So I really like that a lot. And it's
Awesome.
a
It
what
a
a
lot leads.
$12 or $13 addition to your system.
Yeah, and it actually I guess it makes cleanup a lot easier, right?
It really does, yeah, yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, so tell us a little bit. I think this would probably be a great time to talk about it. Is let's talk about the difference between the two systems that you see out there. You see a HERM system, and then what you have there, but also like a REMS system. Are you familiar with the
Yeah,
REMS enough to talk about it?
yeah. So the HERMS system, rather than recirculating the wort through a coil that's submerged in water, you would run it through a tube which has a heating element in it,
Mm-hmm.
and that heating element heats the wort as it runs through there and then back into the mash tun, and you change your temperature that way. A lot of people will know the Sabco Brew Magic system, the one that
Mm-hmm.
they advertised that Sam Calagione got his start on. That's a RIM system. I considered that when I started. What I didn't like about it is the fact that a heating element is in direct contact with the wort, and I was worried that there could be scorching in it.
Yeah.
So I don't know that that's a real worry or not,
I
but
think
it's
it
just
is
something
if
that.
you let's just say if you have a stuck mash or something, and your
Hmm.
volume of your wort really slows down, then you can't scorch
Hmm.
your wort. But it is an easy way to get into an electric type automation mash temperature automation. It is a little simpler to get into that rather than doing the HERMS. But you can also do the same thing with a HERMS by just having an electric and or some people use gas valves and all of that. We had somebody ask that earlier about how do you control the temperature of your gas with your gas, and I'm like, it's all manual, I believe, isn't it, Brandon?
Yeah, with mine it is, and that's one of the things with the RIM too. Is I believe that really to do it correctly, you've got to have a computerized controller that's measuring the temperature of the wort, which is constantly
Mm-hmm.
recirculating and
Mm-hmm.
turning that heating element on and off as needed.
Yeah.
So mine is very manual. Uh, if you look around here on the back, I've got my propane just piped into a manifold, and I've just got basic on and off valves on the back here, and I just turn the burners on and off when I need to. And then my control panel is just a real simple on and off too. I've got master power and then on and off for each of my pumps. And so I just kind of turn things on and off as I need to. I have a good feel for how everything works, so I have no problem controlling everything that way. To me, it was going to be a lot of added expense and a lot of trouble to automate things that I just don't feel like would make a huge difference. I don't have a lot to do during a brew day as it is. I don't feel like I need to cut down on, turning a switch on and off or something like that. For me personally, that's just my preference. But
Right. Right.
so that's why
Understood.
my
Yeah.
system is the way it is.
Well, and I had something similar at one time. I think I'm going to go back to it. I had I think you had even seen it too. It's kind of a combination of a rims and a herms. I'll have to show the guys out there sometime. We're actually getting ready to hook it up on our big brew system. So it's basically a corny keg with a coil with a 220 hot water heater element inside of that. So
Hmm.
you're
Hmm.
getting that quickness, but you're also not getting that direct contact with the wort. So it's a
Yeah, I
way that's
believe
worked real
Stephen
well for
Vicky
me.
Brown brewed on one like that for a long time, didn't they?
Yeah,
Or they
they have
might
one
still.
similar. Yeah,
Yeah, I've
except
heard
theirs is a
really good things about
110.
that.
Theirs is a 110 though, so it was really tough to raise temperature. You could maintain temperature, but it was tough to do step mashes with it. So the
Hmm.
220, man, you can raise it up, 10 degrees in a matter of 5-6 minutes. I mean, it's quick as long as you're recirculating through there quickly. So it's pretty awesome
Yeah,
the way
see,
it
and that's
works.
one of the reasons I go without the constant recirculation. Also, I keep my mash tun at about 190 to 200 degrees. So when I need to change temperatures, I can change 10, 15 degrees in 5 or 10 minutes. And I wouldn't be able to do that if I was constantly recirculating. In order to do it, then you have to wait for the mash, or excuse me, the hot liquor tank temperature to rise up in order for your mash to also rise up. And it's just a lot slower process. Uh, especially doing protein rests or something like that, where you're talking about going from about 110 to 113 degrees up to your saccharification rest, which is going to be, 150 or so. That's a lot of temperature to raise up to, and you want to get it done as quickly as possible. So that's
Mm.
kind of why I like this setup the way I do.
The problem I've had with it with a Herms, or my biggest challenge is I have big temperature swings when I was trying to raise up the temperature or control it a little bit. It seemed that I'm sure that comes with time as you learn how to your system a little better, or how much you have to raise it, and by how much you raise it up in the hot liquor tank to how much temperature you're going to gain in your mash. So
Yeah, and there's kind of an opposite principle at work there too. We're used to like immersion chillers where you want the flow through the chiller to be as high of a flow rate as possible because you're absorbing the heat and getting it out of there. With something like this, where you're talking about the wort being inside this coil, submerged in water and changing temperature, you actually want the wort to be in that coil longer so that it has a chance to absorb the heat from the hot liquor tank. So really a low flow rate works much better for these. It also keeps you from sucking your grain bed down into your mash tun and all that. And so it's a little bit different than what we're used to with some of the other homebrewing applications that we've got where you want a lot of flow rate.
yeah, and we've noticed too that the more hose you have in line there, the faster it cools off. The temperature really does have that you lose
Yes.
temperature loss on your hoses. So
Yeah.
that's a
And that's a
problem.
very good point. That's one of the reasons I designed this the way I did. If you look at my hoses here, I have two different lengths of hoses. I've got these short ones that go from the tops of the pump into the vessel, and then I've got my longer ones that go, from the vessel down to the bottom. And I have these just as long as they need to be to reach where they are. And I set everything at equal distances, so I only have to have these two sizes of hoses. A lot of people that have these systems end up with 5 or 10 different hoses that are all different lengths to reach from here to there to the other thing or whatever. And I thought it was important to standardize it. And also, like you say, keep them as short as possible so you're not losing the temperature while it is inside that silicone hose.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if it's cold outside, you can lose a whole lot of temperature in a real
Yeah.
hurry.
Yeah, you're right.
So Brandon, why don't you tell us? Let's see here. Let's talk about what you're brewing today.
Yeah, so I'm brewing the strong bitter that I came up with for the uh, Denton County Brewers episode that we did, where we there was 5 or 6 of us that all did a strong bitter. This is kind of a hybrid English pale ale in that there's some rye in it, which really made my sparge interesting today. I almost had a stuck sparge from that, even though it's just a half pound of rye. It really muddies things up, especially as finally as I grind the grain.
Uh huh.
But this is going to be on the strong side. This is going to come out a little over 6%. So that's why I'm adding some corn sugar to it. You saw me doing the first step as I'm trying to dry it out and keep it as drinkable as possible because I am in the upper range of what these English pale ales should be. I really probably should shave a 0.5% off of that, but it's just kind of how it came out. I'm
Right on.
using my new favorite here, which is the Mutton's Planet Malt. This is what I use on all of my English beers now. I'm not using Maris Otter. I'm not using Golden Promise anymore. When I'm brewing English beers, I'm using Planet, and that's just all there is to it. I just love it so much. Everything from how well it works on the brew day, the efficiency I get, to there's the richness of the flavor. I think it really stands out. I've said it for a long time. That's one of my favorite things about English beers is being able to taste the base malt in it. It's such a strong character. So I'm really in love with the Planet stuff.
Well, and I think
Uh,
I think you get kind of that Maris Otter character without the astringency you get from a lot of people out there that don't know. Maris Otter is an heirloom grain. It's been around for a long time. So the problem a lot of people don't realize is the kernels are really small. So you have a lot more husk to
mhm.
endosperm ratio. So you get a little more astringency, more tannin flavors. But some people like that. So it does have a characteristic that other malts don't have. But this Planet malt has really nice sized kernels. They're big and plump, so you're going to have really high efficiency with not that astringent flavor, but you still get that malt punch.
Yeah, and it definitely has helped with my efficiency. I've actually had to adjust all my beersmith recipes because my efficiency's gotten so good lately. With between this brew in a bag and then between the malts that I'm using, the Eric's Pilsner malt is really excellent, and then also the Muntins. One of the things I'll point out too, and this is probably something we should talk about in a little detail on the show sometime, is acidulated malt. So I always
Sure.
keep this little thing of acidulated malt here. I found a long time ago that the pH on my mash was way off, and that was really affecting my efficiency. Especially once I moved out to where I am right now, and I'm on well water, which has caused me all kinds of issues. And figuring out how to dial in pH was a tricky thing, but it made a big difference when I got it right. trying to do it with lactic acid, you can do it. It's just it always seems like it's a little bit of a guessing game. The calculators are kind of they're not real consistent and that kind of thing. What I eventually figured out is 5% of my total grain bill is acidulated malt, and I'm in business, and I'm getting 83, 84% efficiency every brew now, and I think the acidulated malt's a big part of it.
Well, and I'm sure that it probably would it have to do with where you're at and what your water chemistry is too, as to if you need
Right.
it or not. So, one of the things
Right.
I
No, and
know.
that's the thing is if you're wondering about your efficiency, you keep thinking everybody else is getting all this efficiency and I'm not. Check your mash pH. Find a way to do it and get that corrected. The first thing that you should do is check that before you start doing any of the other stuff.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think one of the things, if you're here in the Metroplex, is funny because even from Burleson, where I live, into Fort Worth is quite a different change. Well, yeah, if you guys go back, we had that. What was it? Oh shoot, we had a water episode that we all went and did all of our own water chemistry. I don't know if you remember that, where
Oh
we
yeah,
all
oh yeah,
and,
absolutely.
and so it's amazing how different it was from the shop to to where I live or where you live, and even over in Dallas. So it was all different. And one of the things that I realized right away that for especially light colored beers here in Fort Worth, you definitely need to have some acid or
Yeah.
to adjust your pH because it's just not enough. Now, if you have darker malts in there, it helps with the acidity. So you
You
may
know
or
what I
may not.
also found recently helps is smoked malt. When I made a Roush beer, which was about 90% smoked malt, I found that I didn't need as much acidulated malt in there to get it
Yeah.
right either. That seemed to lower the pH quite a bit.
Huh. That's interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't expect that to be the case, but it was.
Huh. I'll be dang. Well, what else you got there, man?
Well, let me give you a little tour of a couple of my fun gadgets around here
Yeah, absolutely.
because I've gotten to the point where I've had all the basics for so long now. I just kind of find fun things to get. One of the things I was just telling somebody online is one of my very favorites is this digital refractometer. I don't know if Mikey talked about his
No,
when he
he
was brewing
didn't.
yesterday, but this thing is the best. You just in order to take a reading on it, you just turn it on. You just put a couple of drops on there, and you hit read, and boom, it gives you your measurement. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it is so much better than messing around with regular refractometers that you got to stand just right in the light and all that. And now definitely better than hydrometers. We've talked about it a lot on the show that if you're brewing all grain, you really need to have a refractometer so
Yeah,
that you can
absolutely.
check your gravity as you go. I check my gravity several times during the sparge to make sure I'm where I need to be and try to hit my numbers exactly. And then here's my awesome come and brew it kegerator. I got to show you that.
That's awesome.
And my brew pie that I'm trying to get set up here for I don't know how many years now. You keep giving me a hard time about it. If anybody out there listening knows how to set these things up, please contact me because I could use some help. Apparently, I'm not smart enough to set up the software on it. So
Well, it's funny is the the it was like we were talking to Mikey yesterday, and he was telling us about his Raspberry Pi. The what he's using to automate his system with, and he's saying that I was asking him the guy that made it, is he still selling those units, and he was like, no, I don't think so because, or at least he's not currently because they have a new Raspberry Pi out now, and they're going to have to readapt it to because it's a whole new structure evidently. So they're
oh
going to
yeah.
have to really change it up. But it's some interesting stuff. Are you using tilts or anything like that, or any kind of fermentation control other than just a normal
I,
refrigerator?
I'm not. I need to get this brew pie up and running because that'll tie into a tilt. The tilt is my next thing because sorry about the train there.
That's
The tilt is my next thing because I've really gotten into brewing lagers this year. In fact, I've got you remember Mikey Light or what he calls Bud Light. I've got that lagering right now, which is
okay.
his version of Bud Light. So we're gonna see just how good my lager brewing skills are. But with something like that, where you're talking about an original gravity of 1036, and you're trying to time your diacetyl rest when
That's
you're just going to
pretty.
lose, you know, 20, 25 points of gravity, it
Yeah,
would be really nice for that. So that will be my next thing, but I
yeah,
want to get that brew pie up and running because it needs something to connect to that I can then read it off of my phone and that kind of thing.
yeah. That
So
And so
That's on the list.
the brew pie is just going to control your fermentation
Right, right.
temperature.
And if anybody remembers the episode we did with Mike Treadway, uh, basically the difference is, and here it is, here's the actual brew pie itself, and then the Arduino to control everything. The difference is that it's got two different temperature probes. One that reads the temperature of your beer, and the other that reads the temperature of the air inside your fermentation chamber. And it learns the curve as your beer is approaching the right temperature, when to shut the compressor off and all that. And it stops the wide swings between the ups, the highs and the lows of the temperature as your firm chamber tries to keep it at the right temperature. And it basically keeps it within like a half a degree all of the time without the big swing. So that's kind of what I'm shooting for on that. Again, with lagers, I think it's more important. And some of the beers that I brew, the English beers, I think it's really important to hold them at a certain temperature. So
Is it possible to use those tilts with that brew pie, or is it just something completely different?
yeah, no, the brew pie, or excuse me, the tilt needs some sort of a Bluetooth device within range of it that
Okay.
can read it. And so, yeah, the Raspberry Pi has Bluetooth built into it, and it'll be able to connect to it and read it, and I'll be able to then connect to the Raspberry Pi via my phone and look at things and change fermentation temperatures. So I'll be able to, when I'm traveling for work, I'll be able to see, all right, I'm halfway through my fermentation. It's time to start ramping up the temperature for my diacetyl rest and all that. So I can do that kind of thing when I'm not here.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thanks, Brandon, for showing us around your brewery. Is there anything else you wanted to show or say before we get off of here?
I'll save a couple things for next time. We'll do it again. Let's next time
Yeah.
let's talk about chilling and whirlpooling and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think that would be perfect. That'd be perfect,
Yeah.
man. So,
I'll be doing a Pilsner sometime in the near future. We can set it up then.
all right, perfect, man. Well, Brandon, thanks so much for coming out. And if you guys have any questions, make sure to leave comments here, or you can send us information at info@texasbrewinginc.com. Of course, you can always see all of our podcasts on iTunes and Stitcher. And so, if you guys have any questions, you can always give us a call as well. So, anyway, thanks
Yeah,
again, Brandon.
and also look at my social media page or my Facebook page, which is Brew with Brando or just Brandon M. You can always private message me questions and stuff there. I have listeners contact me fairly regular, so feel free to contact me there too.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a good point. If somebody wants to ask about your system or how you got it set up or anything like that,
Yeah, yeah.
check it out. All right, dude. We'll
All
holler
right.
at you soon and stay safe, and hopefully we'll all get together soon and be brewing and stuff again.
Yes, sir.
All
Cheers.
right, cheers, man. Bye. Thanks, guys.